in this video, I am going to solve 16 questions that I have designed for you to master literal equations. So, without further ado, let's get started. Now, question is telling us to solve each question for the indicated variable. So the first one, or the first question, has us solve for b in an expression that says a is equal to 4b. So let's get started. I am going to start by making a mark on the variable that we want to solve for, and that is b. So let's get started. A is equal to 4b, and I am going to solve for this b. So I am going to place that variable with the variable that we want to solve for on the left side of the equation. So 4b is equal to a, and I want to isolate this variable of b and get rid of everything else. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to divide both sides of the equation with 4 so that I can get rid of this coefficient of 4 in front of b. That way I get b is equal to a over 4, or it's the same thing as 1 over 4 times a. So that's going to be my answer for that first question right there. So I am going to place it right there for your reference. Meanwhile, let's move on to the second question. I have m times n is equal to 7, and I need to solve this equation for m. So I'm solving for this m. So let's rewrite the whole expression. M times n is equal to 7, and I am solving for m. So the same, I need to isolate that variable of m, so I need to lose this n, and I can do this by dividing both sides of the equation with n. That way I can eliminate that n and end up with m is equal to 7 over n. And that is going to be our answer for that second question right there. Okay, moving on to the third question. I have 16pq is equal to 4, and I need to solve for q. Don't get confused with P and Q. I am solving for this Q right there. So I'm going to rewrite this right here on my blank space. 16 times P times Q is equal to 4, and I'm solving for Q. So same with this question. I need to get rid of everything else but Q from the left side of the equation and send everything else to the right side of the equation. So I need to get rid of 16, and I also need to get rid of p. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to divide each variable that's present in the expression with 16 times p. That way I can get rid of both 16 and p from the left side of the equation and end up with q is equal to 4 over 16p. But we are not done yet because we can simplify this expression by trying to divide both numerator and denominator with 4. And if we do that, we get 1 over 4p. So my final answer for this third question will be 1 over 4p. So that's going to be our final answer to this third question. All right, so moving on to last question on this page. We have x times y is equal to t plus x, and we are solving for the variable of x. So let's rewrite the whole expression on this blank space on the right. X times y is equal to t plus s, and we are solving for this x. So I want to get rid of this y from the left side of the equation, and I can do that by dividing every variable that's present in this expression with the variable of y. Okay, and that way I can eliminate y from the left side of the equation and end up with x is equal to t over y plus s over y. Or we can also express this like this. You can factor out 1 over y and have t plus s, or you can rewrite this as t plus s over y. So all of these expressions are correct, so I am going to include all three expressions as my final answer for this last question on this page. Oopsie, sorry. There you go. All right, so let's move on to second page of this worksheet and continue on. Now I have slightly more advanced literal equations questions here, but don't worry, I'll walk you through every step. I have a plus b, a minus b is equal to c plus d, and we are solving for the variable of b right here. Oopsie, let's use let's use this marker. So I'm gonna copy down the expression right here. And since I'm solving for this b, I am going to get rid of everything else that's present on the left side of the equation. First, I need to get rid of this a, and I'm gonna do that by subtracting a from both sides of the equation. I can get rid of that a successfully, and I'm left with not just b, but negative b on the left side of the equation, and on the right side I have c plus d minus a. Now what do we do with this negative sign right here? Well, what I can do is I can multiply negative 1 to every variable that's present. And end up with plus b is equal to negative c minus d plus a. Because we are multiplying negative a with negative 1, we have plus a. So we can rearrange this to make it look better. We can say a minus c minus d, although this expression is also good as to be your final answer. So I'm gonna mention both expressions as my final answer for this first question on this page and put it right here. All right, moving on to second expression, I have 2e plus 3f is equal to 5k, and I'm solving for the variable of f. So let's rewrite the whole thing here. 2e plus 3f is equal to 5k, and we are solving for f. So I want to get rid of 2e first from the left side, so I can do that by subtracting 2e from both sides of the equation. I can get rid of that, and I am left with 3f is equal to 5k minus 2e. Now, I want to further isolate f by getting rid of that coefficient of 3. And I can do that by dividing every variable with 3. And if I do that, I can get rid of that coefficient of 3 in front of f and say f is equal to 5 over 3k minus 2 over 3e. Or I can rewrite it as 5k minus 2e over 3. Both works as our final answers, so I'm going to include both expressions to be my final answer, and I'm gonna write it up right here as my final answer. Okay, moving on to the third question on this page. I have x over y is equal to z plus 2, and we are solving for the variable of x right here. So I'm going to rewrite this expression here. X over y is equal to z plus 2. I like making this little line on z so that we do not get confused with z and 2. Some people write 2 as like this, and if you write z just like that, you can get confused, although they are two different things. And this question demonstrates why it's important to write z properly so that you would not get confused with a number 2. Anyways, I went off tangent a little bit. Let's move back to our question at hand. In order for me to isolate x, I need to get rid of that denominator of y. How do I do that? Well, I can do that by multiplying y to every variable that's present in this expression. That way I can eliminate that denominator of y and end up with x is equal to zy plus 2y. Or I can write it as x is equal to y parenthesis z plus 2. So both are right, and I'm gonna write both as my final answer. Now what I did here is I factorized this expression by factoring out y, which is common variable. Okay, so y was occurring in both variables, so I factored out y and put it in front, and I wrote down whatever was left out by getting rid of y. So it was z and 2. All right, so that was my final answer for that third question, and I'm gonna write it right here and move on to fourth question. I have r is equal to vn over s, and I'm solving for this n right here. So let's rewrite the whole expression. R is equal to v times n over s, and I am solving for n. Now let's rewrite it so that we have this n expression on the left side and everything else on the right side. So v times n over 2 is equal to r, and I am solving for n, meaning I need to get rid of v and I need to get rid of this 2. So first, let's get rid of 2 first by multiplying 2 to every variable that's present. I can eliminate that denominator of 2 and end up with v times n is equal to 2r. Now I need to further isolate this variable of n by getting rid of this v, and I can do that by dividing every variable with v. And if I do that, I end up with n is equal to 2r over v. And that's going to be our final answer. So I'm going to box it and move it to right here. Okay, so that was second page done. Let's move on to third page to slightly more advanced questions. But don't worry, I am going to walk you through each and every step. Okay, so I have 3c is equal to 4d plus 6, and I am solving for this variable of d. Okay, let's get started. 3c is equal to 4d plus 6. Now, I like putting the variable that I'm solving for on the left side of the equation. That's just a habit of mine. You don't have to do it exactly the way I do it, but it definitely helps, so I would advise you to do that. So let's rewrite it. 4d plus 6 is equal to 3c, and I am solving for this d, meaning I need to get rid of that 6 first. So let's get rid of that 6 by subtracting 6 from both sides of the equation. I'll end up with 4d is equal to 3c minus 6. And since I am trying to isolate that variable of d, I am going to then divide every variable with 4. That way I can get rid of that coefficient of 4 in front of d. Now I can say my d is equal to 3c over 4 minus 6 over 4, but you cannot write that as your final answer because this part of your answer is not completely simplified. You can simplify that as 3 over 2. Isn't that correct? So we can say d is equal to 3c over 4 minus 3 over 2, or better yet, you can say d is equal to 3c over 4 minus 1 and 1/2. Since this is improper fraction, you need to, well, you don't have to, but you can change it to mixed fraction. So I'm gonna box this version of my answer as my final answer and write it right here. There you go. Okay, so let's move on to second question on this page. I have L is equal to m plus n over p, and we are solving for this p. Now, this is going to be a little tricky because we are solving for a variable that's in the denominator, but don't worry, let's get started. L is equal to m plus n over p, and we are solving for this p right here. So let's rewrite it so that we have p on the left side of the equation. M plus n over p is equal to L. Now, in order for us to solve for p, we first need to get rid of this m. So let's subtract m from both sides of the equation. I can get rid of that m and say that n over p is equal to L minus m. Now, what I'm going to do is I am going to get rid of that p because I do not want to see that on in the denominator section. As long as you have a variable in the denominator, it's not going to do any good. So I am going to multiply p to every variable that's present so that I can get rid of that variable from the denominator place and say n is equal to LP minus MP. Now, what you have is you have a variable that you want to solve for on the right side of the equation, and you have it in two places. So what you can do here is you can factor out P and write L minus M, and that's equal to N. Now, because I do not like having the variable that we are solving for on the right side of the equation, I am going to write like that, and then try to get rid of everything that's not p from the left side of the equation. And that is L minus M, so I can get rid of that by dividing every variable with L minus M. Okay. All right, let's move things up a little bit so that we can continue solving this question. Okay, so that way we can get rid of this whole thing from the left side of the equation and finally completely isolate p variable on the left side. And on the right, we have what? We have n over L minus m. And that is our neat little final answer for this second question on this page. Great! So let's move on to third question on this page, and let's solve for d from this expression. Now we have 2a is equal to b plus c times d, and we are solving for d. So let's have this d variable on the left side of the equation by writing it like this and erasing this part. Now, what we need to do in order to isolate the variable of d, we need to get rid of b first. So let's do that by subtracting b from both sides of the equation. We can get rid of that b and end up with c times d is equal to 2a minus b. Now, since we are solving for this variable of d, we need to get rid of this c, and we can do that by dividing every variable with c, and that way we can eliminate that coefficient or variable of c and say d is equal to 2a over c minus b over c. And that's going to be our final answer for this third question. Great. Moving on to last question on this page, we have 2e plus 3 over f is equal to 5, and we are solving for the variable of f. So 2e plus 3f is equal to 5, and we are solving for the variable of f, which unfortunately is in the place of denominator, but we already have mastered it in this question, so we can do this again. Let's get started. Well, as I have already told you, it's not a good idea to have a variable that you're solving for in the place of denominator. So I am going to try to get rid of this f in the denominator by multiplying f to every variable in this expression. That way we can eliminate that variable of f from the denominator and end up with 2ef plus 3 is equal to 5f, and we are solving for the variable of f. So let's collect all f variables and put it on the left side of the equation and put everything else on the right side of the equation. Now I am going to send 5f to the other side of the equation, and when you are sending something across the equal sign to the other side of the equation, that variable changes or switches its sign. So it becomes negative 5f, and this one plus 3, when it moves across the equal sign, it becomes negative 3. So if I rewrite it, I have 2ef minus 5f is equal to negative 3. Okay. And then, since we are solving for the variable of f, I am going to factor out f and write down whatever is left out, which are 2e and negative 5. And that's equal to negative 3. Now I am going to send no, I am going to get rid of this parenthesis expression by dividing all variable with that parenthesis expression. That way I can eliminate this expression completely and successfully isolate f, and that is equal to f is equal to negative 3 over 2e minus 5. And that's going to be our final answer to this final question on this page. All right, so this part could have been a little confusing, but if you find my method of crossing over a little confusing, then you can always subtract 5f from both sides to get rid of the variable that you want to get rid of. And to get rid of plus 3, you can subtract 3 from both sides and eliminate this and end up with negative 3 on the right side. I mean, either way it works, but once you get used to this method, crossing over by switching sign method is much easier, so get used to that method, I would advise. Anyways, let's move on to our last page of the